Lately, I've been thinking a lot about change. There is so much change going on in the world around us today. AI is changing the world of work as we know it. Many people are losing their jobs. Unfortunately, they're having to change companies or they're having to change careers entirely. Economies around the world in different countries are struggling. The cost of living is rising. So many people are having to move house, move to different cities, or maybe even move to different countries as well. And then there's probably change that you might be experiencing in your personal life, like having a baby or getting married. Some people like change. They will embrace it and they'll welcome it into their lives, while other people do not like change at all and they will resist it with all of the power that they have. For me, I think it really depends on what kind of change we're talking about. If it's positive change, like having a baby, then obviously that's something you want to happen and you will embrace it and welcome it into your life. Whereas if it is negative change, like losing a job, then that is something that you do not want to happen. And in that situation, that is when you will tend to resist that change. So I don't think people have difficulty dealing with change when it's positive, but when it's negative change, when it's something that you do not want to happen, that's when you need to draw on your inner strength in order to navigate and to deal with that change well. And we have to remember that not all change is good. Sometimes it can present danger, and that's why we have that natural urge to avoid that change or to resist it. So in those kinds of situations, we need to approach that change with an inquisitive mind. You basically need to approach that change wanting to learn more about it, to make sure that you're going into a situation that is safe, that is not dangerous for you. Now, upon creating this video, I was visualizing change, and I visualized change like this, as a point in time between an old state and a new state. Now, when you're in the old state and you can see change coming in the distance, you might be fearful, you might be afraid, simply because you don't know what is on the other side of that change. So you might ignore the change, you might pretend that's not happening, or you might resist it with all of the power that you have. Rarely can you stop change from happening. Once you've moved through the old state, then you'll hit a transition point, and this is where the change actually happens. This is very quick. This is very short-lived, and you will either let that change happen, you will decide yourself to just welcome that change and let that change happen, or that change will just happen on its own because it's something that you cannot stop. Rapidly, you'll be on the other side of change into the new state, and this is where you are learning to deal with the change. This is where you learn to adapt to the change or to navigate the change that has happened in your life. Now, sometimes you might still find yourself resisting it. Sometimes you might still find yourself denying that change has ever happened, but sooner or later you'll be forced to accept it. You'll be forced to live with the change that has actually happened. So it can be hard to deal with change, whether it's in the old state or whether it's in the new state. But there are some things that have helped me in my life in dealing with change, and I want to share them with you in this video. Becoming familiar with change is the first step in dealing with change, and this is where you understand more about the change that's about to happen. It's when you're in the old state and you are trying to understand what that change is and how it's going to impact you and your life. Becoming familiar with change can happen in many different forms. If, for example, you're in a meeting and someone is proposing a new idea or a new concept that represents change, then understanding that change would include you listening to that person and really trying to understand what they see. You might even visualize that change. You might visualize the new state as they explain it to you. If the change is a larger issue, if it's more global, for example, AI has dramatically changed our lives. If you want to understand that change, then that would include you researching, learning, reading, watching YouTube videos, listening to podcasts, talking to people who have knowledge in the area of artificial intelligence. If the change is internal, for example, if it's something that's happening in your personal life, then understanding that change would include you thinking about what the new state for your life would look like. You might also read self-help books to help you deal with that change and understand it better. You might create a list of pros and cons. You might talk to people who have been through a similar or the exact same change that you were facing. All of these things are going to help you understand that change and become a lot more familiar with it. As you can see, there are a number of ways in which you can become familiar with change. All of these methods require time, they require an open mind, and a willingness to at least consider the change that is presented to you. Once you become familiar with the change, it is also important for you to understand the why. Why is this change happening? Why is it important to you? How is it going to impact your life? There is something revealing about understanding the why. It's like when you have an aha moment when you're learning something new, when all of the pieces of the puzzle puzzle just fit together and everything just makes sense. Simon Sinek, in his book Start With Why, talks about understanding the why in terms of a company's vision. He uses what's called a golden circle, which is exactly what you see on the screen right now. And he explains that most people, when they're explaining their job, they start with what they do, which is the outside ring. Then they might also explain how they do it, which is the inner ring. But they often forget to explain why they do what they do, which is the inner point. People need to understand the why because it's the only thing that is going to connect with them on an emotional level. It's the only thing that's going to get them moving into the direction that you want them to take. And in terms of change, it is the only thing that is going to get people to understand and to embrace and to welcome that change that is about to happen in their life. For example, if you understand why you need to change careers because AI has completely taken over the job that you currently do, then it makes it a little bit easier for you to accept the loss of one job or one career and to welcome a new one. But if you don't understand why you need to change jobs, then you will never accept that you have to change jobs. And you will continually come up against a brick wall when you are applying for that exact same job that you currently have. In short, when you understand why that change is happening and why it's important for you to adapt to it, then it is much easier and more likely for you to embrace it rather than reject it. I highly recommend Start With Why by Simon Sinek. I actually revisited this book recently using short form, which is a great way to reconnect yourself with the key points from one of your favorite books. If you want to check out short form, then use the link in the description below. That will give you 20% off the annual subscription fee, as well as 5 days free access to short form. So check it out in the description below. Closely tying in with the why is seeing the big picture, which is really important when you are approaching change or when change is presented to you in your life. It's important for you to understand how does the change affect your life in the long term? How does this change affect others around you? And how does this change affect the organization and its position in the entire industry? Usually when we're facing change, we don't take a look at the big picture or the broader picture of that change. We really only see the very small part of that change, of how it's going to impact us, how it's going to affect us and our lives and in that moment as well. But this is a very limited view. It only tells us part of the story. If we could look at change on a bigger scale, on the bigger picture of change, then we'd be much more likely to welcome it and embrace it, mostly because we understand how it is going to impact our lives in the long term, or how it is going to impact other people or the company entirely on a broader scale. This reminds me of a YouTube video that I saw many years ago. You might be familiar with it. It's a video of a young boy who is coloring pieces of paper, sheets of A4 paper. He colors many sheets of A4 paper purely in black crayon. His parents are looking at him. They have no idea what he's doing or what he's creating. They start to get a little bit worried there. But then he starts to diverge. He no longer colors the entire sheet in black crayon. He colors most of it and leaves part of it white. And he does that over many other A4 pieces of paper. After a while, the parents discover, once all the sheets of paper have been colored, the little boy starts to put these sheets of paper together on the floor like a puzzle. And the parents step back and they discover that what he's actually drawn this whole time, what he has been drawing, was a picture of a whale. They had no idea that each piece of black paper that he was coloring in black crayon was going to create the picture of a whale. I'm explaining this because this little boy obviously had this big picture in his mind. His parents couldn't see that. They couldn't see what was in his mind, what he was thinking, what he was doing. But this little boy, he had that big picture approach, and is really hard for people to understand from the outside. Like when we're talking about change, it's really hard to understand on the outside of that change, what that change is actually going to present to you in your life. So I want you to think about this story to help you deal with that change a little bit better and try to develop a bigger picture and a bigger view of the change that is happening in your life. Don't take the small view of that change and stay there, and because that will make it much easier for you or much more difficult for you, to embrace and to welcome that change in your life. So step back, look at the big picture, because that will really help you deal with that change better. If you know which video I am talking about, the story of that little boy, I tried to look for it on YouTube. I couldn't find it at all. But if you know of it, if you can find the link for me, put it in the comments below, because I think all of us will benefit from watching that video. Before I finish up, I want to give a quick shout out to all the channel members. Thank you so much for supporting my channel and supporting me in creating these YouTube videos. If you want to become a channel member yourself, then check out the link in the description below. There's a video you can watch and see if it's something that you're interested in. Now, when you are dealing with change, what is really important, especially when you're looking at the big picture and trying to visualize the big picture, is the ability to think strategically. This is something that's really going to stretch your mind in ways that has probably never been stretched before. So if you want to learn how to think more strategically, I have two really popular videos on my channel. You will find both of them up here on the screen, which you can watch now. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope it helps you deal with change better, and I will see you next week in another video.